For 15 years, my family has seen me as little more than a grease-stained disappointment, the son who traded a college degree for a commercial driver's license. They mocked my career as a trucker, then they tried to corner me with a staggering $6,000 restaurant bill. My response was simple. I said no, threw down $40 for my drink, and walked away from their lives for good. My name is Jake. I'm 36 years old, and I've spent nearly half my life on the asphalt arteries of America. My journey began as a company driver, a grueling existence of earning meager pay, catching a few hours of broken sleep in the noisy chaos of a truck stop, and being a ghost at every family holiday. In those early days, I was pulling in about $38,000 a year, all while being treated like a disposable cog by dispatchers. The cab of my first rig was a testament to its history, smelling of a stale symphony of 3 decades of cigarette smoke and forgotten fast food. But I had a vision. I saved every single penny, living a Spartan life in a $600 a month studio apartment with cinder block walls and a shower stall clearly not designed for my 62 frame. Eventually, I scraped together enough to buy my own rig, a used Peterbilt 389 with a daunting 780,000 miles on the odometer, which I painstakingly patched up myself. Then I bought a second one. Today, I command a respectable fleet of 8 trucks, employ 12 drivers, and have a small office staff of 3. After all the expenses, fuel, maintenance, insurance, and payroll, I clear around $380,000 a year. Not too shabby for the family dropout. This success didn't happen overnight. I spent 5 long years driving for other companies, meticulously saving the $45,000 I needed for the down payment on that first truck. I sacrificed my nights to attend business management classes at the local community college. My family, of course, never seemed to notice these efforts. I researched the most lucrative routes, specializing in refrigerated cargo which commands higher rates, and built a sterling reputation for always delivering on time. This dedication led to contracts with regional grocery distributors who wanted the reliability without the headaches of managing their own fleet. My best friend, Mike, saw my potential from the very beginning, even when everyone else was snickering about my trucker phase. He was the only one who understood. "These people don't get it, man," he'd often say in his typically blunt fashion. "They think success only comes from a framed piece of paper on a wall." Mike owns an auto body shop on the other side of town and has all the subtlety of a sledgehammer, which is precisely why we've been inseparable since our high school football days. We were the right side of the offensive line. He was guard, I was tackle. We protected our quarterback like our lives depended on it, and that protective instinct carried over into our adult lives. 2 years ago, I adopted Atlas, a magnificent German shepherd rescued from a shelter. Some heartless individual had abandoned him when they moved out of state. Now, he's my constant companion, riding shotgun in my F-350, snoozing in my office. He's everywhere. It was the best decision I've ever made. When you have a family like mine, having a creature who offers unconditional loyalty makes all the difference. Atlas has become the unofficial mascot of my company. My drivers bring him treats, the office staff spoils him rotten, and my clients always ask how he's doing. Honestly, he has better social skills than I do, and an uncanny intuition about people. If Atlas doesn't like someone, there's usually a very good reason. In stark contrast, my older brother, Daniel, who is 39, followed the correct path. He got his accounting degree, married his college sweetheart, Sarah, and they have 2 kids, a boy and a girl, aged 8 and 6. The picture-perfect American dream, right? Daniel earns about $90,000 a year working for a large firm downtown. He lives in a 4,000-square-foot house in a manicured suburb with a $2,800 monthly mortgage, drives a leased BMW 5 Series he can barely afford, and is quietly drowning in about $40,000 of credit card debt he never speaks of. To our dad, Daniel walks on water. Every Christmas gathering is a performance where Daniel boasts about their latest exotic vacation or the new set of golf clubs he just had to have. I only know the truth because I once saw his credit card statements left on the kitchen counter when I was visiting. It was a sea of minimum payments. The man is financially submerged, but puts on a master class in pretending to be a king. My parents are their own unique brand of trouble. My dad, 63, spent his career in middle management at a manufacturing plant, perpetually complaining about being overlooked for promotions. His mantra was, "I would have been a VP if it wasn't for all the office politics," completely ignoring his mediocre performance and his habit of taking credit for others' work. My mom, 61, worked part-time at a doctor's office, where her primary activities seemed to be gossiping about patients and judging their life choices based on their medical charts. They both possess that classic boomer mentality, convinced they worked harder than any generation before or since, while conveniently forgetting the economic tailwinds they enjoyed. Dad loves to recount how he paid for college with a summer job, omitting that a semester cost about $500 back then. Mom brags about buying their first house at 23, failing to mention it cost 3 times their annual income, not the 8 to 10 times it costs young people today. Our relationship steadily eroded over the years. Every rare visit was punctuated by Dad's passive-aggressive jabs about my profession. "Saw one of those big rigs jackknifed on the highway today," he'd casually mention at dinner. "Guess that's what happens when they let just anyone get a CDL these days." Or he'd loudly praise Daniel's latest promotion right in front of me before asking if I'd ever considered going back to school for something real. What they chose to ignore was that, while Daniel was living paycheck to paycheck in his McMansion, I was quietly building an empire. My fleet now generates over $1.8 million in gross annual revenue. I hold major commercial contracts, own a portfolio of 4 rental properties that bring in $5,700 a month in passive income, and manage a 7-figure investment account. My sister-in-law, Sarah, however, was aware of the cracks in their facade. In quiet moments when Daniel wasn't around, she'd drop hints about their financial strain. "Daniel had to take out a cash advance to pay for Timmy's baseball camp," she once confided. Or, "We're thinking of refinancing the house again to consolidate some debt." The irony is, I've bylaid them out multiple times. When their mortgage was underwater during the 2008 housing crisis, I gave Daniel a $15,000 interest-free loan that was never mentioned again. When Dad's prized Cadillac needed a new transmission, I covered the $4,800 repair bill. When Mom required extensive dental surgery not covered by her insurance, I quietly handled the $3,200 invoice. When Daniel's son needed an emergency operation and their insurance had a $5,000 deductible, guess who wrote the check? These acts of support were conveniently forgotten whenever it came time to show me a shred of respect. "That's just how some families are," Mike once told me as we watched a football game. "They'll take your money with one hand and slap you with the other." It's the Thompson family specialty. He wasn't wrong. I also have a half-sister, Chloe, who is 27, the result of my father's brief affair years ago. Mom took him back but has always treated Chloe like an unwelcome guest. Chloe and I, however, get along great. She's a talented tattoo artist who never bought into the family's nonsense and is the only one I maintain regular contact with. For the last 4 years, I'd barely seen the rest of them. Last Christmas, I mailed gifts for the kids but skipped the family dinner. Chloe would occasionally visit me on the road. That was the extent of our interactions. I was far too busy growing my business to entertain their constant drama. My doctor even noted that my blood pressure dropped 15 points after I ceased regular contact. Then, last month, the call came. Dad was retiring, and they were throwing a big family celebration at Morton's Steakhouse, the most ostentatious and expensive restaurant in town. First, Mom called, then Daniel, then Mom again. Chloe sent me a text. "They're being really weird about this dinner. I think something's up." I should have trusted her intuition, but foolishly I thought maybe, just maybe, they wanted to make amends. A tiny part of me, after 15 years of their condescension, hoped they had finally come to see me as more than just a blue-collar failure. I pulled up to Morton's in my F350 Platinum, a beast with a 7.3 L power stroke diesel engine, 1,050 lb-ft of torque, and a custom flatbed for hauling emergency parts. I'd paid $84,000 for it in cash. Atlas was in the passenger seat, looking at me with an expression that seemed to say he knew this was a bad idea. I told him to stay put and cracked the windows. The valet eyed my truck with a mixture of awe for the machine and confusion for its driver. He couldn't decide if I was an eccentric millionaire or a contractor who had made a wrong turn. I handed him the keys and a 20. "Park it somewhere I can see it," I said. "The security system is a bit touchy." A white lie. I just wanted to keep an eye on it. Trust issues have served me well. The valet's look was one I'd seen my whole adult life. The look that dismisses you as an uneducated grunt who just moves things from a to be they don't see the complex logistics, the management of a multi-million-dollar operation, or the fact that I earn more in a month than they do in a year. Their ignorance isn't my burden to carry. Inside, they were seated at a large, prominent table. Dad was holding court, loudly pontificating about his legacy at his company. Daniel sat beside him, nodding along like a dashboard bobblehead. Mom was on Dad's other side, wearing the strained, phony smile she reserves for public appearances. Sarah looked tense, constantly glancing at her phone. The kids weren't there, likely with a sitter. Chloe hadn't arrived yet. There were 2 other people I didn't recognize who turned out to be Dad's boss, Mr. Harrison, and his wife. Perfect. An audience. When Dad saw me, he didn't get up. He just gestured with his head. "Well, well, the prodigal son returns." "Figured you might be too busy with your big trucks." The contempt started immediately. I should have turned around right then. I moved to sit in the empty chair next to Sarah, but Daniel quickly intercepted. "Actually, Jake, that one's for Chloe. Why don't you grab a chair from that other table? This is for immediate family and Dad's guests of honor." I stared at him, letting the implications sink in. I wasn't immediate family. Mom quickly offered a flimsy excuse about the seating chart. Everyone at the table was watching, as if this were some kind of test. Daniel wore that smug look he's perfected since childhood. I retrieved a chair from an empty table and squeezed myself in between the wall and the corner of their table, an island of one. The waiter arrived, looking puzzled by the arrangement, but said nothing. "Just water for now," I told him. That's when I started noticing the signals. The exchanged glances between Dad and Daniel. Mom's repeated comments about the importance of proper retirement planning. Mr. Harrison and his wife seemed oblivious to the tension, just happy for a free meal. When Chloe arrived, she took one look at the scene, shot me a questioning eyebrow, and made a beeline for me. "This feels like an ambush," she whispered as she gave me a hug. "Yep," I whispered back. "Let's see how this plays out." She took her designated seat, blissfully unaware of the slight I had just endured. Then the ordering began. Dad went first, grandly announcing he would have the $165 tomahawk ribeye. Daniel and Mom followed suit with similarly extravagant orders. I could see Sarah's face pale when Daniel added on both a lobster tail and black truffle butter, her lips silently forming the words, "We can't afford this." Mr. Harrison and his wife ordered the surf and turf. Mom made a grand spectacle of insisting they get appetizers for the table. A quick mental calculation told me they had already surpassed $2,000 on a single meal. As the food arrived and the wine flowed, the agenda became painfully clear. Every few minutes, someone would direct a comment at me about the trucking industry or my finances. "Those big rigs must cost a fortune in gas these days, huh?" Daniel remarked. "What are you paying? Like $5 a gallon?" "Somewhere around there," I replied, not bothering to mention my bulk fuel contracts that kept my costs 22% below retail or the fleet card that gave me an additional 5% rebate. "I'm sure Jake is doing better than you think," Chloe interjected, trying to defend me. "Oh, I'm sure he's doing just fine," Mom cut in quickly. "Though it must be tough living in that little apartment of his." I almost laughed out loud. I hadn't lived in an apartment for years. I owned a home on 5 acres just outside the city, bought for $410,000 in cash 2 years prior, but they wouldn't know that since none of them had ever bothered to visit. My home has a 3-car garage housing my weekend indulgence, a 2023 Corvette Z06 I bought myself after landing a major contract. It also has a fully equipped gym and a workshop where I restore vintage motorcycles. But to them, I was still in that tiny apartment. When the dessert menus appeared, Dad, now slurring his words from the expensive wine, leaned back and declared, "Let's get one of everything for the table." The waiter, delighted, scurried away. Daniel then turned to me with what he must have thought was a subtle look and said, "By the way, Jake, we all figured since you've missed so many family functions over the years, you'd want to pick up the tab tonight. You know, as a make-up gift for Dad's retirement, we already mentioned it to the server." And there it was, the real reason for the invitation. All the years I had wondered if I was the problem, this moment validated everything. They didn't see me as family. They saw me as an ATM. 3 hours and countless drinks later, the waiter returned with a black leather bill folder. He placed it directly in front of me. "Whenever you're ready, sir," he said with a practiced smile. The table fell silent. Dad watched me with an expectant, raised eyebrow. Mom had her public-facing smile plastered on. Daniel was actively smirking. I picked up the folder and opened it. The total was $5,850.76, almost $6,000. I could buy a full set of Michelin X-Line Energy Z tires for one of my rigs for that price. To put it in perspective, $5,850 is the gross revenue from one of my trucks making a profitable 3-day run from Chicago to Dallas. They had burned through that amount on a single, ostentatious meal. I closed the folder and set it down. The silence was thick. "Well," Dad finally broke it. "You going to take care of that or what?" I looked slowly around the table. "Did anyone here actually ask me if I was willing to pay for this dinner tonight?" Daniel scoffed. "Oh, come on, Jake, don't be like that. We all know you've got the money. Those trucks must be pulling in something. So, because I have money I earned by breaking my back for 15 years in a job you all look down on, I'm automatically on the hook for a $6,000 dinner I never agreed to." Mom leaned forward. "Jake, this is for your father's retirement. Don't cause a scene." "I'm not causing a scene," I said calmly. "I'm asking a question. When did I agree to pay this bill?" Dad's face was turning a blotchy red. "This is ridiculous. Just pay the damn bill so we can go." I picked up the folder again, looked at it one last time, and then placed it squarely in front of my father. "No." The word landed like a grenade. Dad's jaw dropped. "What did you just say?" he sputtered. "I said no." "I am not paying for this." Daniel jumped in. "You can't be serious. This was the plan." "A plan none of you bothered to share with me," I retorted. "You just assumed, like you've always assumed everything about me." Mr. Harrison and his wife looked mortified. He cleared his throat. "Perhaps we should contribute our share." No, Dad said quickly, waving him off. "This isn't your problem. My son is just being difficult." I leaned back. "I'm not being difficult. I'm setting a boundary." Something I should have done a long time ago. Chloe was trying to hide a grin. Sarah was staring intently at her plate. Mom's voice dropped to a venomous whisper. "Jake Michael Thompson, you will pay this bill right now, after everything we've done for you." That made me laugh, an actual, audible laugh. "After everything you've done for me, let's recap. You've belittled my career for 15 years. You've systematically excluded me. You've never once set foot in my business or my home. Dad, you told your golf buddies I was between jobs while I was building a multi-million-dollar company. None of you, except Chloe, have any idea what my company even does." Dad started to protest, but I held up a hand. "No, I'm not done. You want to know what successful retirement planning looks like? It looks like the diversified investment portfolio I started building when I was 25. It's living below your means, not blowing $6,000 on dinner and expecting someone else to foot the bill." I pulled out my wallet, laid two $20 bills on the table to cover my water and a generous tip for the waiter, and stood up. "Jake," Mom called out, her voice cracking. "You can't just leave us like this." I turned back one last time. "Watch me." The looks on their faces were a masterpiece of shock and indignation. As I walked out, I heard the manager approaching their table. Their night was about to get a lot more complicated. I was halfway to my truck when I heard someone running after me. It was Sarah, Daniel's wife. She looked frantic. "Jake, please," she pleaded. "They really can't pay for this. Daniel was laid off 3 months ago. He hasn't told anyone." That stopped me. "What?" she nodded, her eyes welling up. "The credit cards are all maxed. We're behind on the mortgage. Your parents are in bad shape, too. Your dad's retirement package wasn't what he thought it would be. And you thought the solution was to trick me into paying for a $6,000 meal. It wasn't my idea," she said quickly. "It was Daniel and your dad. They thought you wouldn't make a scene in public. Why didn't Daniel just ask me for help?" "Pride," she said simply. "And your dad convinced him this would work." For a split second, I felt a pang of pity. Then I remembered 15 years of disrespect. I remember Daniel telling our cousins my business was just a phase long after I'd cleared my first $1 million in revenue. "Tell Daniel he can call me tomorrow," I said finally. "We can talk, alone, but I'm not going back in there and I am not paying for that dinner." She nodded and hurried back inside. I got in my truck where Atlas greeted me with a tail wag. Through the restaurant window, I could see the argument unfolding. The manager was there, arms crossed. Mr. Harrison and his wife were pulling out their wallets. I started the engine and drove away. My phone immediately exploded with texts and calls. I turned it off. The open road has always been my sanctuary. It clears my head. That night, I realized I had spent years waiting for their approval, which was never going to come. They had shown me who they were, time and time again. It was time I finally believed them. The next morning, my phone showed 17 missed calls and over 30 texts. Most were from family, but one was from Mr. Harrison, Dad's supposed boss. "Jake, this is Samuel Harrison from dinner. I got your number from the server. I think there are some things you need to know about your father's retirement." I called him back immediately. "Mr. Harrison, yes. Thanks for calling," I said. "Look," he began, sounding weary, "I feel I need to set the record straight. I'm not your father's boss. I'm his financial advisor." My stomach dropped. "That dinner last night, your father told me it was a family celebration for your new business partnership with him. Something about you bringing him on as a consultant for your trucking company." "That's a complete fabrication," I said, stunned. "He's never had anything to do with my business." "I figured as much," Samuel said. "Listen, I don't normally discuss my clients' affairs, but after what happened, you deserve the truth. Your father isn't retiring. He was terminated 3 months ago for embezzling company funds. They gave him a choice: face criminal charges or resign quietly with no severance package." My head was spinning. "So the dinner. Your father and brother concocted the whole thing. They told us you were extremely successful and wanted to treat everyone to celebrate. We had no idea they planned to stick you with the bill." I hung up after thanking him and immediately called Chloe. "Did you know Dad got fired for stealing?" "What? No, I thought he was retiring," she said, shocked. "That explains why they've been selling stuff on Facebook Marketplace. Mom's jewelry, the riding lawnmower." The more I investigated, the uglier it got. Daniel hadn't been laid off. He'd been fired for falsifying expense reports. Dad had already cashed out and spent his entire $401K. Mom had been telling friends that I had promised to take care of them financially in their old age. The dinner was their desperate, manipulative attempt to tap the bank of Jake. 3 days later, I got a text from Dad. "We need to talk. Family meeting at our house tomorrow at 6. Not an apology, a summons. I pulled into their driveway on time, Atlas in the passenger seat. The house already looked neglected. Inside, the whole family was assembled. "Have a seat, son," Dad said. I remained standing. "I'd rather hear what this is about." "We've hit a rough patch," Dad began. "The company, there was a misunderstanding about some funds." "You mean you got fired for stealing?" I asked, cutting through the euphemism. His face reddened. "It wasn't stealing. It was an unauthorized loan I was going to pay back." "And Daniel?" I asked, turning to my brother. "Creative accounting," he mumbled. "They didn't appreciate my methods." "So fraud," I clarified. He didn't deny it. "So what do you want?" I asked. "We thought, as family, we could help each other out," Mom said. "The dinner was a test to see if you'd step up." I laughed. "A test I clearly failed." "This isn't a joke, Jake," Mom cried. "We're about to lose this house." "Let me get this straight," I said, looking at each of them. "You spend my entire adult life treating me like dirt, and now that your lives are imploding, you expect me to be your savior." "You're doing well," Dad countered. Those trucks must be worth a fortune. They are, I said, and I built this business despite you, not because of you. Here's what's going to happen, I announced. I'm not giving you a dime to prop up your fake lifestyle, but I will offer Daniel a job. Daniel's head shot up. Doing what? Driving one of my trucks. The silence was deafening. You want me to be a truck driver? He asked, his voice dripping with disgust. Yes, starting pay is $75,000 a year, full benefits, health insurance, 401k with a 3% match. It's honest work, Daniel, the kind you've spent years looking down on. Dad was furious. This is your idea of helping, humiliating your brother. No, I replied. This is my idea of teaching him some humility. I then pulled a folded paper from my pocket. By the way, I took care of your bill at Morton's. Their faces lit up for a second. I registered it as a formal loan from my company. Those are the repayment terms, I said, handing the paper to Dad. $6,000 plus 8% interest due in 24 months. Daniel can work it off at a rate of $250 per paycheck. This is a joke, Dad stammered. It's a legally binding agreement. My lawyer already filed it. You can't do this, Daniel said. You wanted my money, I said. Fine, but you don't get it for free and you don't get it through manipulation. I turned to leave. Victor, the job offer stands. If you're man enough to take it, call me. What if we don't pay the loan? Dad yelled after me. I turned back. Then I'll take your house. It's listed as collateral in paragraph 3. It wasn't, of course, but watching the color drain from his face was worth the bluff. 2 weeks later, to my utter astonishment, Daniel showed up at my office. I'll take the job, he said, unable to meet my eyes. He started the following Monday at 5 a.m. Sharp. He had to go through training and get his CDL, but he did it. The first time he thanked me was after he received his first paycheck. He lasted 3 months on the road before he quit. I won my $100 bet with Mike, but those 3 months changed him. He found a new respect for the work I do. He eventually found an entry-level accounting job for half his old salary. Dad and Mom had to sell the house and move into a small apartment. They still tell people I'm a monster who abandoned them. That's fine. The loan agreement? I never enforced it. That was never the point. Chloe, with a small business loan I co-signed, opened her own tattoo studio and is thriving. She paid me back a year early. My relationship with Daniel is civil now. His kids come over to swim in my pool and play with Atlas. His son thinks Uncle Jake's big trucks are the coolest things in the world. Last month, I added 2 new rigs to the fleet and signed a national distribution contract. Business is good. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I just paid that bill. It would have been the first of many. Instead, I drew a line in the sand. I'm still not invited to family gatherings, and honestly, it's the greatest gift they've ever given me.